我们的。
In the Bible, we're being promised this.
圣经告诉我们说，你们要将一切的忧虑卸给上帝。
Because it tells us that we should lay all our burdens and anxieties on Him.
不管这个让你忧愁的事情是多么的巨大，不管这件事情是多么的困扰你，圣经告诉我们说，如果你觉得这件事情是不在你的掌握当中的，交给上帝。
Whether this burden be too large or too heavy or too complex and it's beyond your capability to manage, cast it onto the Lord.
因为没有一件事情是在上帝眼中也认为是做不到的事情。
Because nothing is impossible in God's sight.
也没有任何一个困难是上帝都无法去面对的困难。
And there are no difficulties that God cannot solve.
所以圣经告诉我们说，我们的人生不应该活在忧虑里面。
And so the Bible tells us that we should not live a life of anxiety.
我们的人生要活在喜乐当中，
but rather live a life of happiness.
因为我们的生命当中有那么一位顾念我们的上帝。
Because in our lives we have a God that cares for us.
他的眼睛看顾麻雀，他的眼睛更会看顾我们每位。
And as He watches over the sparrows, He will also watch over each one of us.
今天我们要来共同思考一个主题，这个主题叫做扩张你的地界。
Today we would like to discuss this topic about expanding your territories.
我想，无论对于我们任何一个人，你在做任何的事情，你有任何的身份，我想这是我们每一个人共同的人生的目标。
And it doesn't matter what life you lead or what motives you have, but this should be the common aim of each one of us.
只要你是一个求上进的人，
If you are one that wishes to be on the upward mode,
只要你是一个活着有目标的人，
you are the one that lives with a definite motive and motto.
无论你是做学术的，无论你是医生，无论你是商人，无论你做任何的事情，我想我们每一个人内心当中都有这样一个共同目标，我们希望说我们的地界可以越来越大。
Whether you be in the academics, or whether you be in the medical profession, or whether you're a businessman, you know that you would like to expand your territory.
可是当我们冷静下来去反思我们的人生的时候，
But yet, when we collect our thoughts and reflect on our future,
我们会发现说，其实在我们每一个人的人生当中，从来都没有缺少过目标。
and we know that during our life's journey, we were never lacking of aims or motives.
有目标，我们的生命里面是不缺少的。
Because we always have a goal or aim in our life.
你无论去大街上抓住任何一个人，你问他说：“你的人生有目标吗？”
And if you would go to the multitudes on the streets and ask any one of them whether they have an aim in life,
我相信任何一个人都会告诉你说：“我的人生是有目标的。”
and every last one of them would say, yes, they have an aim in life.
我的人生的目标是要这个拯救全人类。
For instance, one would say, my aim is to rescue the mankind.
我的人生目标是要成为一个名动天下的这么的一个人。
Or that I'm going to be world famous.
可是20年以后，你问他说，
Yet if you were to ask this same person 20 years later,
你20年以前的目标哪里去？
and ask him what happened to your aims that you set 20 years ago,
他可能会告诉你说，那个目标消失在时光里。
he will probably say, well, my aim disappeared with the passing of time.
我们每一个人的生命里面，其实都不缺少目标，我们缺少的是向目标迈进的毅力。
So we do not lack for an aim in our lives. The thing we lack is the perseverance to go after this.
我们的人生里面从来不缺梦想。
And in our lives, we are not lacking of dreams.
我们缺少的是把梦想变为现实的勇气。
But rather, we lack the courage to change our dreams into reality.
很多时候，我们想要举步往前行，
Many times we would like to take the step forward.
但是我们会因为可能会出现在我们前面的困难，我们就忘了却步。
And yet, when we felt that there's some difficulty facing us, we then hesitated about taking that first step.
很多时候，当我们晚上入睡的时候，我们是满怀雄心的。我们告诉自己说，明天早上起来我要去做一件事情，这件事情是有意义的事情，是有价值的事情。
And many times at night, during the bedtime, before we fall asleep, we determine that we're going to do something extraordinary the next morning.
但是到第二天早上起来的时候，可能因为小小的一个障碍，就会让我们彻底的灰心丧志。
And yet, the next morning, just for some very minute obstacles that we face, we lost our courage and our aim.
因为我们看看我们自己拥有的能力，看看我们自己拥有的资源的时候，我们就觉得说，哎呀，这个是不可能的。
Because we look inwards to our own resources and our own capabilities, and we say, "Oh no, I can't do that."
为什么？因为我们的生命里面没有神。
Why is that? That's because in your life you're lacking God.
也许今天我们很多人会听到这句话说啊，这个从来没有听过，没有神有什么关系？
You may say, "Oh, I've never heard that being said. What's that to do? How important is it to have God?"
我活了20年，活了30年，活了40年了，我从来没有神过，我照样活得好好。
You know, I've lived 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, and I've never had God, and I'm still living quite well. Thank you.
我不在意有没有神。
And I don't care whether I have God with me or not.
我在意的是有没有钱。
Rather, I care whether I have money.
这是我现在很在意的一件事情。
Because this is something I care very much at present.
所以今天你如果去问很多人说你在不在你的生命里面没有神，他说告诉你说他不在意，他在意的是我有没有房子住，我有没有这个豪车可以开，有没有名车可以开，我有没有这个钱包里面有没有鼓鼓的金钱。
And so many of the people, when they ask them whether they worry whether they have God in their lives, they will say no. But they are concerned whether they have a house, whether they have a beautiful car, or whether they have money in the bank.
可是你要知道，如果我们的生命里面没有神，
And yet, let me tell you this: if you do not have God in your lives,
你的生命里面就没有超然的能力。
then you lack this extra power in your life.
因为你最终你会发现说，我们现在所拥有的东西，所能得到的回报是很有限。
Because eventually you'll find out that all that you have achieved or all that you are going to possess are going to be limited.
这个世界上很多东西是靠着我们的能力所产生不了的。
There are many things in life that if we depend on our own resources or capabilities, we cannot achieve.
你不可能开出你的钱包，告诉这全世界说，我拿出钱包，我就想要什么，我就可以拿到什么。
Because there's no way you can say, "Here you are, this is the money I have. I can do whatever I want to do with it and be able to do it."
在我的老家曾经有一个很有名的商人，
Now, in my home village, there was this famous businessman.
但他很年轻的时候就过世了。
But he died when he was still very young
因为他身体出了问题。
because he had some health issues.
那所以在温州就流行一个很有名的段子，
And so in Wenzhou, there was this popular saying.
因为他的太太呢后来就另外嫁了，
Because his widow later on remarried.
嫁给谁呢？是嫁给他的司机。
And then, whom did she marry? She married this guy's chauffeur.
所以有人就认识那个司机，就问那个司机说：“哎，你这个娶了这个太太以后有什么想法？”
And so people that knew this chauffeur came to him and said, "Now that you've married this wealthy person's widow, how does it feel?"
他说：“我现在明白一件事情。”
And he said, "Now I realize one thing.
他说：“以前呢，我觉得自己很辛苦。
Before, when I was driving the car, I felt very put out.
他说，因为我就觉得我每天没日没夜的就为这个老板打工，
Because every day I'm toiling for this boss of mine.
我就是一个开车的，我就是一个司机。
All I am is just a chauffeur.
老板叫我什么时候去，我就得什么时候去。
I'm at the beck and call of my boss.
我就觉得自己人生苦得不得了。
And I feel that I was living a miserable life.
他说，等到这个老板死了以后，等到这个老板的太太嫁给我以后，我才明白说，哦，原来不是我替老板打工，是老板替我打工。
It's only after I married my boss's widow that I realized that all this time I wasn't working for my boss, but rather my boss was working for me.
因为他的遗产都留给他太太，他太太嫁给我，但那钱也就是我。
Because he had worked all hard to accumulate all that wealth, and that wealth now becomes money.
我们在那个城市里人都知道说，这个富翁在他生命垂危的时候，他尝试过很多的方法。
Now in Wenzhou, people all knew that this rich person, as he approached death, he tried many different ways to prolong his life.
因为他真的不缺钱。
Because he was really not lacking money.
可是你要知道说，当金钱去面对人世间真正重要的东西的时候，金钱是无能为力。
And yet you also know that when you face some real issues or some real difficulties, sometimes money cannot solve them.
金钱在面对死亡的时候，在面对这个疾病的时候，是无能为力。
Because when you're facing disease, when you're facing death, your money really could not help you.
所有基督徒都知道说，没有神的生命就没有超然的能力，没有神的生命就没有那个活泼到连死亡都毁灭不了的那一个盼望。
And so all Christians know that without God they are nothing, but with God they know that they can even face death, which may take away their life, but they will still continue on.
没有神的生命，很多时候我们就没有冲破现实困境、直面人生艰难的那么样的一种勇气。
And without God, we do not have the courage to take that next step.
今天我们看到这一段的圣经。
This morning, as we read this passage,
这一段圣经就告诉我们有这样的一个人。
In the passage, it describes this person.
他的父母亲给他取了一个很糟糕的名字。
The name that was given to him was not a very good name.
我们把它叫做是亚比斯。
In English, it's Jabez.
因为我们不知道他的名字的意思到底是什么。
And we do not know the real meaning of this word.
但今天圣经上告诉我们说，他的名字的意思就是什么？就是痛苦。
But here in this passage of the Bible states, Jabez means pain, difficulty.
我不知道这个妈妈到底恨这个孩子恨到什么地步。
I'm just wondering how much did the mother hate this child?
因为她生这个孩子的时候，可能是难产，可能是生的不是太顺利。
It could be that the labor was difficult.
所以这生下来之后呢，看见这个孩子可能肚子里这个一肚子的气，所以就说，哎，这个孩子就起名叫痛苦吧。
And so maybe upon seeing the newborn, all her frustration or anger was placed on the child, and so she named him Jabez, which means pain.
所以这个孩子的名字就叫做痛苦。
And so his name means pain.
所以这个名字就一生跟着这个人。
And so his name followed him the rest of his life.
他可以在他的人生当中，每一天都听到有人跟他说：“哎，痛苦，过来吃饭。”
And so each day in his life, you hear others calling him by his name.
痛苦，过来跟我们一起玩。
Say, pain, come play with us.
痛苦，这个到这来，我有话跟你讲。
Or pain, come here, I have something to say to you.
我就想，如果我有这么一个名字，我不痛苦也会变成痛苦。
And I was thinking that if I have such a name, even though I was not in pain, I will begin to feel the pain.
因为你每一天都要被人不停的提醒，被人不停的告知说，哦，你的人生就是痛苦。
Because each day, constantly, you're being reminded by others that your life is one of pain.
你每天都在听到不同的心理暗示，告诉你说呀，你的人生没有色彩的，你的人生没有愉悦的，因为你人生就是痛苦。
And each day, deep down in your heart, you're being reminded that your life is one of pain and no future.
你要知道，这个心理暗示是很厉害。
You know that your mental feeling is a very important feature in your life.
所以有一个很有名的一个实验，很有名的一个实验，很有名的一个测试。
There was this very famous test that was carried out.
他说，如果今天你去面对一个完全健康的人，
If today you were to face someone who's in complete good health,
你给他安排几个人，
and you arrange for him to meet some people,
那在他的公司里面，
or in his office,
那当他一开始进入到这个公司里的时候，第一个人过去说：“哎呀，你今天没事吧？”
and if upon arriving at his office, the first person that met him would say, "Oh, how are you today? Are you doing okay?"
那你的脸色不太好哎。
It looks like you don't look too well.
哦，这个人会说：“哦，是吗？我脸色不太好。”
And immediately this person will start thinking, "Oh, am I not feeling too well? My features not too good."
那他会到镜子面前去照照，说：“哎呀，我的脸色是不是真的不太好啊？”
And he will go in front of the mirror and examine himself.
为什么我脸色今天比平常苍白一点呢？
And wonder why maybe his face was paler than normal.
等到他从这个镜子旁边走开的时候，安排第二个人去。
And as he left the mirror, they arranged to have a second person approach him.
说：“哎呀，你没事吧？”
Second person will ask him the same question. "Are you okay?
你的嘴唇怎么没有血色呀？
How come your lips look very bloodless?"
那这个人心里面就开始打鼓了，说：“哎，今天到底怎么回事啊？”
And that will cause this person to start wondering, what's happening to me today?
当这个测试呢，最强的人呢，是到第7个人说他脸色不好的时候，就到经理那里去请病假。
According to this experimental test that was carried out, the strongest person withstood this test until the 7th person before he decided to take a day off.
他说：“经理啊，不行啊，我这个再不回去我就死在这里了。”
Before he decided to go to the manager and say, "No, I'm not feeling well. I better take off."
全公司的人都说我不行了。
Because all the people in the office said I'm not doing well.
最弱的人呢，3个人跟他讲，他就请病假。
The weakest person succumbed after 3 persons telling him that he wasn't looking too good.
那回到家里面呢，有20%的人真的是病。
And upon returning home, 20% of these people that went under this test really became sick.
那因为你每天都是听到有人告诉你说：“哎呀，你身体不好啊，你这个身体不行啊，你脸色难看。”这种暗示对你的影响是相当大。
So, having subjected yourself to this kind of hint all the time, it really casts a heavy shadow over you.
这个名叫亚比斯的人一出生就输在起跑线上。
And this person, Jabez, from his birth, he already was at a disadvantage.
因为他一出生的时候，他的妈妈就给了他全世界几乎最糟糕的名字，他的名字叫做痛苦。
Because at birth he was already probably given the worst name that can be given to a child.
就好像比赛还没有开始，他就已经认输了。
It's almost like even before the match begins, he had already lost.
他也听这个名字听了几十年的时间，我相信他应该接受我的人生就是痛苦的这个事实。
And having heard his name mentioned for so many years, he probably came to the conclusion that yes, his life was one of pain.
我们今天很多时候也会被一些东西限制。
Likewise, today we may be limited by certain things.
中国人
Someone call you, point to you and say you're a Chinese.
不单单是别人叫我们中国人，我们自己也对我们自己人说我是中国人。
Whether you be called a Chinese or you feel yourself that you are a Chinese.
所以你听到别人对你讲 你也自己对自己讲，你告诉自己说：“哎呀，我们再努力，我们是中国人，所以我们没有办法在美国进入主流社会。”
And so maybe in your subconscious, knowing that you are Chinese, and in this society of ours, you probably will not be able to gain and go into the upper echelon of this society.
你一定会听到这样的声音，
Because this is something unavoidable.
一定会有很多人告诉你说：“你不要去做这样的努力，你不要去做这样的尝试。为什么？因为你是中国人。”
And it could be also that you've been told many times that don't waste your time, you will not be able to reach that goal because you are Chinese.
可是你还没有努力，你就已经认输了。
And you have already given up even before you began.
在这教会里面，我们经常会听到我们自己对自己说，我们也听到别人对我们说啊，圣谷、小教会。
And so it is also with this church, whether we hear among ourselves or other people telling us that, yes, St. Gabriel Valley Church is a small church.
这小教会这三个字就把我们限制住了。
And this two words, small church, puts a limitation on what we can do.
所以我们常常告诉我们自己说：“哦，我们是小教会，我们是小教会，我们就是小教会。”
And so many times we tell ourselves, yes, we are a small church, we are a small church.
所以我们什么都不用做，因为我们太小。
And so therefore we do not need to do anything because we're so small.
可是我们什么都不做，那我们永远都是小教会。
And yet if we do nothing, we'll continue to be a small church.
如果我们就告诉自己说，我们就是小教会，就是小教会，我告诉大家，我们这个教会只会越来越小，我们没有可能越来越大。
And so if we continue to say to ourselves that we are a small church, we are a small church, then there is no other way except for us to continue to be a small church.
为什么？因为我们已经接受这个事实。
Why? Because we already accepted that as a fact.
我们接受这个事实，我们承认说我们就是小教会，而且我们永远都会是。
We accepted that as a fact, and we realized that we left ourselves no other recourse except continue to be a small church.
上帝没有给我们一个使命，让我们去建立一个小教会。
God has not given us a commission for us to establish a small church.
上帝没有给他任何的一个门徒，给他任何一个跟随他的人，给他们一个命令说：你们去建立一个小教会，你们去守着那一个小教会。
God has not given any of His apostles or followers this commission to go forth and start up a small church and keep it a small church.
上帝给我们的梦想从来都不是小梦想。
For the dream that God has given to us has never been a dream of small things.
因为这位上帝告诉我们说，他要在我们生命当中所做的事情，是他要给我们带来改变。
But rather, God has promised us that in whatever we do, He will bring changes in our lives.
因为他是一个能够把无变为有的上帝。
Because He is one that is able to change something from nothing to something.
上帝要在我们每一个人身上所做的事情，就是他要带领我们去跨越我们作为人原来所要面对的生命的那一个限制。
But rather, God has promised us to tell us that He will lead us going through life and being able to cross the threshold going towards the future.
上帝告诉我们说，他要带领我们做的事情是超过我们的能力的事情。
And He's promised us that what we can accomplish through Him is way beyond what we would have been able to do on our own.
在我们所不能的，在他就能。
What we cannot, He can.
也许今天我们有人认为说，哎呀，我年龄太大了，我差不多了。
Some of you today may think that, oh, I'm getting up there in age and I probably won't be able to be of any help.
我可以听到很多人这样讲说，啊，张牧师，我年龄差不多了，我不行了。
I probably can hear quite a few of you saying to me, Pastor Joe, I'm kind of old now, I probably won't be able to do it.
我告诉你，讲这样的话的人，各个年龄的人都有。
You know, let me tell you this. This kind of saying is not limited to any age.
有一天，有一个20几岁的青年人来到我面前说：“哎，赵牧师，我不行了。”
Because one day a 20-year-old young person came to me and said, Pastor Zhao, I can't do this.
我看他看了半天，我说：“你凭什么不行啊？”
And so I looked at him for a while and then I said, why do you say that?
那你要不行，那我更不行啊。
Because I say, if you cannot do it, then I definitely won't be able to.
什么时候我们觉得自己不行的时候，我告诉你，你就真的不行。
When is it that we can truly say that we are not able to do so?
摩西80岁的时候，摩西觉得说我不行了。
Moses, when he was 80 years old, said that he was no longer able to do so.
所以他写诗的时候都写得很诚实，说人的年日是70岁，若是强壮可到80岁，他觉得说我差不多了。
And so he was very honest with himself in his writings. He says, man's lifespan is 10, and after he is 80, he's probably coming to the end.
因为年龄的限制在这里，我80岁。
Because to him, the age limit is there. Now I'm already 80.
上帝说：“哎，不是这样的，我告诉你，你可以的。为什么？因为你还年轻，你还要再活40年的。”
But God says to him, no. In my eyes, you can do so because you still have another 40 years to live.
所以我如果在你的生命当中，我要给你带来改变，你认为不行的，我让你可以行。
And so I'm going to bring changes into your life. In what you may deem impossible, I will make it possible.
也许今天我们会说啊，我们圣谷教会人太少。
Or today you may say that the St. Gilbert Valley Church's membership is too small.
我们聚会的时候只有70个人、80个人、90个人。
And when we worship, we may total maybe 70, 80, or 90.
我们能够做什么？
And what can we do with that small number?
可是你要知道，说2000年以前，
But remember, over 2,000 years ago,
有那么11个人，
there were these 11 persons.
他们聚在一起。
There they gathered together.
他们你看看我，我看看你，他们也问我们同样的问题，他们会问说：“哎，我们能干什么呢？”
And like us, they too look at each other and say, what can we do?
我们总共就11个人。
Because we are only 11 in number.
我们什么都没有。
We possess nothing.
那不要说教堂了，我们什么都没有。
Don't even talk about a church building. We have nothing.
但是就在那个时候，上帝找到这11个人，上帝对他说：“哎，就是你们这11个人。”
And yet, at that time, at that moment, God found this 11 and said, yes, this is the work for you, the 11.
我要给你们带来，
I'm going to bring changes.
我要把你们从11个人改变到几十亿。
I'm going to change your numbers from 11 to millions.
我要把你们从毫无能力改变成充满能力。
And change you from completely powerless to one filled with power.
上帝说：“我的能力，圣灵要把能力加在你们身上。”
God says, the Holy Spirit will grant you power.
你们要从耶路撒冷、犹太全地、撒玛利亚直到地极去做我的见证。
That you will go forth from Jerusalem and Samaria to the ends of the world to proclaim my word.
所以今天我们所有的人，我们都是那11个人开始所结的果子。
And so today, each one of us are the fruits of those 11.
我们所信的是一位能够给我们带来改变的神。
The God we believe is a God that can bring changes in
我
our
们
lives.
所信的是一位给我们大的梦想，并给我们实现梦想的能力的那样的一个神。
The God we believe is one that enables us to dream big and enables our dream to come to fruition.
所以你发现这位亚比斯，他不认命，他回到上帝的面前。
And so you find here Jabez returning to God and asking.
他说：“我的人生不要被痛苦这2个字限制住。”
He asked that God remove the name because he did not want to be limited to these 2 words in pain.
因为他知道谁能够给他的人生带来改变。
Because he knew who was able to change his life.
他也知道谁能够把 苦变为甜，谁能够把痛苦变为喜乐？所以他来到上帝面前，对上帝说：“他说，上帝，我甚愿你赐福于我。”
And so he came before God, knowing that God would be able to change his life from pain into pain-free and from sorrow to joy.
他说：“上帝，我的人生要换一个色彩。”
He says, God, I would like to change my life.
我希望你进入到我的人生里。
And that you will come within my territory.
我的原来的人生叫做痛苦。
For my former territory is called pain.
但是当你进入到我的人生当中去的时候，我要把痛苦变成祝福。
And yet, when you come into my territory, I want my life to be changed from pain to one of blessing.
所以今天圣经告诉我们说，我们的身份、我们的现状、我们的家世、我们这些自认为最重要的东西，对于上帝来说都不重要。
And so the Bible tells us today that all that we cherish as important in our lives are not important in God's eyesight.
因为我们所信的是一位能够带来改变的上帝。
Because the God we believe is one that can bring about changes in our lives.
那所以我就想问今天在座的所有的弟兄姐妹们。
And so I would like to ask all those present this morning.
我想问大家一个问题：今天此时此刻，你想成为怎么样的一个人？
And the question is, at this moment in time, what kind of a person would you like to be?
有没有人会不思考这个问题，说我要成为怎么样的一个人？我要在我的人生当中成就怎么样的一个人生？
Are there anyone that without any hesitation or any thinking will say, yes, this is the kind of person I want to be?
如果你有，今天是一个机会，我们可以来到神的面前，对神说：“神，我有一个祷告，我要成为这样的一个人。”
If so, today is your chance because God wants you to say, yes, I would like to become that kind of a person.
我也想问今天在座所有的圣国华人教会的职员。
I also like to pose this question to all the officers of this church.
我们想要这个教会成为怎么样的？
What kind of a church would we like to have this church become?
我们有没有去想象过说，我们这个教会要变成怎么样的一个教会？
Or have we even visualized what kind of a church this church will be in the future?
还是我们根本不介意这个教会要变成怎么样的一个教会？
Or rather, we couldn't even care about what the future holds for this church.
花那么一点点时间去想说，我想要这个教会变成怎么样的教会？从今天开始来到上帝面前，对上帝说：“上帝，你来改变这个教会。”
Maybe we should spend a little time and try to visualize what we would like the church's future be, and then invite God to be with us so that we can have this change.
我也想问今天在座所有的弟兄姐妹。
I would also like to ask the same question to all the people present this morning.
我们想让这个教会变成怎么样的一个教会？
What kind of a church would we like to have this church change to?
我们想要有多少人明天来参加我们的音乐？
How many persons do you wish to have attend our concert tomorrow afternoon?
我们想要多少人来参加我们的活动？
Or how many persons will we wish to have attending our evangelistic meetings?
我们想要这个教会变成怎么样的？
What kind of a church do we wish to have this church?
上帝给我们一个应许。
God has given us this promise.
上帝告诉我们说，只要我们来到他面前求，我们有这样的心愿，我们要扩张我们的境界，我们不愿意接受现在的现实。
God has told us and promised us that if we come before Him and that we are not satisfied with our present status quo and that we would like to have change,
圣经告诉我们说，上帝是一位愿意给我们带来改变的上帝。
And the Bible tells us that God is one that is willing to bring us change.
上帝应允了亚比斯祷告。
God answered Jabez's prayer.
因为上帝知道这个人内心里面最重要的需求。
Because God knew the deepest wishes of this person.
所以今天我们也愿意来到上帝的面前。
And so today we come before God.
我们也用同样的祷告来求这位神。
Let us pray the same prayer.
扩张我们人生的地界。
That we expand our territory.
因为上帝要在我们人生当中做的是赐福的工作。
Because God wants us that in our lives we live a life of blessings.
上帝是一位乐意给予我们的神。
God is a God that's able to pass this on to us.
所以最后的时候，我希望大家可以跟我一起来存着祷告的心来读雅比斯的这一段祷告。
And so in closing, I will invite you all to read with me this prayer of Jabez.
我们从圣愿开始，到不受艰苦结束。我们一起来读这一段的圣经。圣愿你赐福于我，扩张我的境界，常与我同在，保佑我不遭患难，不受艰苦。愿上帝祝福他的话语，也让上帝纪念我们每个人的祷告。
May the Lord bless His words and may the Lord answer the prayers of each one of us.
Amen.